To keep seeing more stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you like this video, share your feedback in the comments section. The secret revealed. Gabriela Santos pressed her trembling hand against the cool marble countertop, trying to steady herself as the morning sickness passed. The mansion kitchen was empty at this early hour, giving her a moment of privacy she desperately needed. She pulled the ultrasound photograph from her uniform pocket and stared at the tiny image that had turned her entire world upside down. 2 months. She was 2 months pregnant with Vincent Moretti's child, the man who ruled the New York underworld with an iron fist. The man whose dark eyes could freeze a person's blood with a single glance. The man who had held her with unexpected tenderness one rain-soaked night, only to pretend she didn't exist the next morning. Gabriela had been working in the Moretti mansion for nearly 3 years. She had started as a young woman fresh from her small hometown, desperate to escape poverty and build a better life. The job paid well, and she had learned to make herself invisible among the crystal chandeliers and priceless artwork that filled every room, but invisibility hadn't protected her heart. She remembered that night with painful clarity. Vincent had returned home after a brutal confrontation with a rival family. His suit was torn, blood staining his white shirt. She had been cleaning the library when he stumbled in, looking more human and vulnerable than she had ever seen him. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. Without words, he had reached for her, and she had gone to him willingly. That night, he wasn't a dangerous crime lord. He was just a man seeking comfort, and she was a woman who had loved him silently for longer than she cared to admit. The next morning, everything changed. Vincent had reverted to the cold, distant boss she knew. He barely looked at her during breakfast service, treating her with the same indifference he showed all the household staff. Gabriela understood the message clearly. That night had been a mistake, a moment of weakness he had no intention of repeating. Now, 8 weeks later, she carried the consequences of that night beneath her heart. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, heavy and purposeful. Gabriela quickly tucked the ultrasound back into her pocket and grabbed a dishcloth, pretending to be busy wiping down the already spotless counter. Vincent entered the kitchen, his presence filling the space like a storm cloud. He wore a charcoal gray suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and commanding height. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his jaw was set in that familiar hard line that warned others to keep their distance. He stopped when he saw her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Gabriela's heart pounded so hard she was certain he could hear it. "I need to speak with you," Vincent said, his voice low and controlled. Gabriela's hands tightened on the dishcloth. Did he already know? Had someone told him? She forced herself to meet his gaze, searching those dark eyes for any hint of warmth or recognition of what they had shared. There was nothing. "Of course, sir," she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. Vincent glanced toward the doorway, then back at her. "Not here. My study. 10 minutes." He left before she could respond, his footsteps fading down the hall. Gabriela leaned against the counter, her legs suddenly weak. This was it. This was the moment she had been dreading and rehearsing for weeks. She looked down at her still flat stomach, placing a protective hand over the tiny life growing there. Whatever happened next, she would face it. She had survived poverty, loss, and loneliness. She could survive Vincent Moretti's rejection too. 10 minutes later, Gabriela stood outside the heavy oak door of Vincent's study. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. Through the door, she could hear his voice, sharp and angry as he spoke on the phone. "I don't care what Lorenzo wants. The deal is off. Find another way to settle this." Lorenzo Vitali. Even Gabriela knew that name. He was Vincent's biggest rival, a man who controlled the docks and had been pushing into Moretti territory for months. The tension between the two families had been escalating, and everyone in the household whispered about the possibility of war. The phone slammed down, and silence fell. Gabriela knocked softly. "Come in." She pushed open the door and stepped into the study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that Vincent actually read. His massive desk dominated the room, and he sat behind it like a king on his throne. "Close the door," he commanded. Gabriella obeyed, her heart racing. She clasped her hands in front of her, trying to appear calm and composed. Vincent stood and walked around the desk, moving closer to her. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You've been sick in the mornings," he said. It wasn't a question. Gabriella's eyes widened. He had noticed. Of course he had noticed. Vincent Moretti noticed everything. "I didn't think anyone knew," she whispered. "I know everything that happens in my house," Vincent replied. His jaw tightened. "Are you pregnant?" The direct question hit her like a physical blow. There was no point in lying or trying to hide the truth any longer. Gabriella reached into her pocket and pulled out the ultrasound photograph. She held it out to him with a shaking hand. Vincent took the image, his eyes dropping to study the grainy black and white picture. His expression remained completely blank, giving nothing away. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. "Is it mine?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Tears stung Gabriella's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "There's been no one else. Ever." Vincent's hand tightened on the photograph, crumpling it slightly. He looked up at her, and for just a moment, she saw something flash in his eyes. Regret? Fear? But it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. "This changes everything," he said. The arranged marriage. Gabriella stood frozen in Vincent's study, waiting for him to say more. The crumpled ultrasound photograph remained clutched in his hand, and the silence between them stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. "You will be taken care of," Vincent finally said, his voice devoid of emotion. "The child will want for nothing." The clinical way he spoke about their baby made Gabriella's chest tighten with pain. She had expected rejection, but the coldness in his tone cut deeper than she had prepared for. "I don't want your money," she said quietly, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. "I just thought you should know." Vincent's eyes snapped to hers, and she saw a flicker of something dangerous in their depths. "You don't understand what this means. A child born to me becomes a target. Every enemy I have will see this baby as a weakness to exploit. Then I'll leave," Gabriella said, her voice breaking slightly. "I'll go somewhere far away where no one will connect the baby to you." "No." The word came out sharp and final. Vincent moved closer to her, and she could smell his cologne, a scent that brought back memories of that night they had shared. "You're not going anywhere. I need time to think, to plan." He walked back to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. Within seconds, his most trusted guard appeared at the door. "Take Miss Santos to the guest wing. She's to be given anything she needs, but she doesn't leave the grounds without my permission." Gabriella's eyes widened. "You're keeping me prisoner?" "I'm keeping you safe," Vincent corrected, though his tone suggested the distinction didn't matter much to him. "Go. I'll send for you when I've made arrangements." The guard gestured for Gabriella to follow him. She wanted to argue, to demand answers, but the look on Vincent's face told her it would be useless. She left the study with her head held high, even as her heart shattered into pieces. 3 days passed in the luxurious guest suite. Gabriella was brought meals she couldn't eat and offered entertainment she couldn't enjoy. She spent hours staring out the window at the manicured gardens below, one hand resting on her stomach as she whispered promises to her unborn child. On the 4th morning, Vincent summoned her back to his study. This time, she wasn't alone with him. A tall man stood by the window, his back to the room. He turned as she entered, and Gabriella found herself looking at Lorenzo Vitali. She recognized him from photographs she had seen in the newspaper. He was older than Vincent, with silver threading through his dark hair. His face was handsome in a refined way, with sharp cheekbones and intelligent gray eyes. Unlike Vincent's raw power, Lorenzo carried himself with the polish of old money and careful breeding. "Miss Santos," Lorenzo said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Please, sit down." Gabriella looked between the two men, confusion and fear warring inside her. "What's going on?" Vincent remained standing behind his desk, his expression carved from stone. "Lorenzo and I have reached an agreement. One that solves both of our problems." "What kind of agreement?" Gabriella asked, though she had a terrible feeling she already knew. Lorenzo stepped forward, his movements measured and non-threatening. "Your situation has come at an opportune time, Miss Santos. I've been looking for a wife, and Vincent needs to ensure your protection and that of your child." The room seemed to tilt beneath Gabriella's feet. "You want me to marry him?" "It's the perfect solution," Vincent said, his voice flat. "Lorenzo gets the alliance he's been pushing for. You get protection, a name for the child, and a life far better than anything you could provide on your own." Gabriella turned to Lorenzo, searching his face for any sign of the cruelty she expected. Instead, she found only patience and something that might have been sympathy. "I understand this is sudden," Lorenzo said. "And I won't pretend there's love between us. But I can promise you respect, security, and a good home for your child. I've always wanted a family, Miss Santos. Perhaps we can build something meaningful together, even if it starts from unusual circumstances." "You know the baby isn't yours," Gabriella said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lorenzo's smile was sad but genuine. "I know. But the world doesn't need to know. As far as society will be concerned, you'll be my wife, and any child born after our marriage will be mine." Gabriella spun to face Vincent, desperate to see some sign that this wasn't what he really wanted. "You're just giving me away. Giving away your child?" For the first time since she had entered the room, Vincent's carefully controlled mask slipped. She saw pain flash across his face, quickly suppressed but unmistakable. "I'm giving you a chance at a normal life," he said quietly. "Lorenzo is a good man. He'll treat you well. Better than I could." "That's not true," Gabriella said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "You could choose to be there. You could choose us." Vincent's hands gripped the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I'm choosing what's best for you and the child. In my world, love is a liability. It gets people killed. Lorenzo can give you safety, stability, a life away from the violence that follows me." Lorenzo cleared his throat softly. "Perhaps I should give you two a moment alone." "No," Vincent said sharply. "There's nothing more to discuss. Miss Santos, you have 24 hours to decide. If you refuse Lorenzo's offer, I'll arrange for you to be relocated somewhere remote with enough money to raise the child. But you'll be alone, and I won't be part of your life or the baby's in any way." The ultimatum hung in the air like a death sentence. Gabriella looked at Lorenzo again, really seeing him this time. He watched her with patient understanding, making no demands, applying no pressure. "May I speak with Miss Santos privately?" Lorenzo asked Vincent. "Just for a few minutes." Vincent hesitated, then nodded curtly. "I'll be in the library." He left without looking at Gabriella again, the door closing with a soft click behind him. Lorenzo gestured to the chair. "Please, sit. You look pale." Gabriella sank into the leather chair, her legs no longer able to support her. Lorenzo pulled another chair closer and sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I know what you must think of me," he began. "A man willing to marry a pregnant woman carrying another man's child must seem either desperate or calculating. Which are you?" Gabriella asked, surprised by her own boldness. Lorenzo smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Perhaps a bit of both. But mostly, I'm practical. I've spent my life building an empire, Miss Santos. I have wealth, power, and respect. But I'm 35 years old, and I go home each night to an empty house. I've always wanted a family, but the women in my world see only what I can give them, not who I am. And you think I'm different? Gabriella asked skeptically. I think you loved Vincent Moretti despite knowing exactly what he is, Lorenzo replied. That takes courage and a capacity for genuine feeling. Those are rare qualities, Miss Santos. Worth more than gold or power. Gabriella wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. He doesn't want me. He's made that very clear. Has he? Lorenzo asked gently. Or is he doing what he thinks is right, even though it's destroying him? What do you mean? Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. I've known Vincent for many years. We've been rivals, yes, but I understand him perhaps better than he'd like. He's a man who has lost everyone he's ever loved. His parents, his sister, all taken by this life he leads. He believes he's cursed, that anyone who gets close to him dies. That's not my fate to decide, Gabriella said. I should have a choice. You do have a choice, Lorenzo agreed. And I'll respect whatever you decide. But know this. If you marry me, I'll treat you with kindness. I'll protect your child as if they were my own blood. And I'll never ask you to pretend to feel something you don't. All I ask is honesty between us and the chance to build a partnership based on mutual respect. Gabriella studied his face, looking for deception and finding none. Lorenzo Vitali was offering her something Vincent couldn't or wouldn't give her, stability and peace. I need time to think, she whispered. Lorenzo nodded and stood. Of course. Take the full 24 hours. Whatever you decide, I'll make sure you and the baby are cared for. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Miss Santos, I think Vincent is making a mistake. But sometimes the people we love make choices we can't understand. All we can do is decide how we'll move forward. After he left, Gabriella sat alone in Vincent's study, her hand resting on her stomach. The baby growing inside her deserved a good life, a safe life. Could she really deny them that because of her feelings for a man who had already made his choice? The truth emerges. The wedding took place exactly 2 weeks later in Lorenzo Vitali's private estate chapel. It was a small ceremony, attended only by Lorenzo's closest associates and a handful of household staff. Gabriella wore a simple ivory dress that Lorenzo had chosen for her, elegant but understated. There was no joy in her heart as she spoke her vows, only a hollow numbness that had settled over her since she had accepted Lorenzo's proposal. Vincent didn't attend. Gabriella had told herself she didn't care, that his absence meant nothing to her. But as she slipped the wedding ring onto Lorenzo's finger, she couldn't stop herself from glancing toward the chapel door, hoping against hope that Vincent would appear and stop the ceremony. He never came. Lorenzo was true to his word. He treated Gabriella with unfailing kindness and respect. Her new home was a beautiful mansion overlooking the water, filled with light and warmth. Lorenzo gave her her own suite of rooms and never pressured her for anything beyond companionship at meals and occasional public appearances. We're building trust, he told her one evening over dinner. Everything else can wait. As the weeks passed, Gabriella found herself growing comfortable in her new life. Lorenzo was intelligent and well-read. They spent evenings discussing books and music. He asked about her dreams and actually listened to her answers. He was attentive to her pregnancy, ensuring she had the best doctors and everything she needed to stay healthy. But at night, alone in her room, Gabriella still cried for Vincent. 2 months into her marriage, everything changed. Gabriella was in the garden, enjoying the afternoon sunshine, when she heard raised voices coming from Lorenzo's study. She shouldn't have listened, but something in the tone made her move closer to the open window. You can't keep doing this to yourself, Lorenzo was saying, his voice firm. She's my wife now, Vincent. You need to accept that and move on. Gabriella's heart stopped. Vincent was here. I know what she is. Vincent's voice came through the window, rough with an emotion she had never heard from him before. I know I have no right to be here. But I need to know she's well. That the baby is healthy. She's fine. They're both fine. I take excellent care of them. There was a long silence. Then Vincent spoke again, his voice barely audible. Does she ever ask about me? Every day at first, Lorenzo admitted. Less now. She's learning to be happy here, Vincent. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted her safe, Vincent said, and Gabriella heard the pain in every word. I wanted her away from my world, away from the violence and death that follows me everywhere. And what about what she wanted? Lorenzo challenged. Did you ever ask her? Did you ever give her the choice? Gabriella couldn't stay hidden any longer. She walked around to the study entrance and pushed open the door. Both men turned to look at her, Lorenzo with concern and Vincent with something that looked like relief and agony combined. He looked terrible. His face was thinner than she remembered, with dark circles under his eyes. His suit, usually immaculate, was slightly rumpled. But his eyes, those dark eyes that haunted her dreams, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Gabriella, he said her name like a prayer. You came, she whispered. Lorenzo looked between them, then quietly excused himself. I'll give you both some privacy. After he left, the silence in the room was deafening. Gabriella and Vincent stared at each other across the space that separated them, neither knowing where to begin. You look beautiful, Vincent finally said. Pregnancy suits you. Gabriella's hand moved instinctively to her rounded belly, now obvious beneath her dress. Why are you here, Vincent? I had to see you, he admitted, moving closer but stopping several feet away, as if afraid to come too near. I had to know you were all right. I'm married to another man, Gabriella said, her voice sharper than she intended. Isn't that what you wanted? It's what I thought was best, Vincent corrected. But not what you wanted, Gabriella pressed, taking a step toward him. Tell me the truth, Vincent. Did you want me to marry Lorenzo? Vincent's jaw clenched, and she saw him fighting some internal battle. What I want doesn't matter. It matters to me, Gabriella said, tears beginning to fall. It matters to our child. You threw us away like we meant nothing. You gave me to another man without even fighting for us. I was trying to protect you, Vincent said, his voice rising. Don't you understand? Everyone I love dies, Gabriella. My mother was killed when I was 12. My father died in my arms when I was 19. My sister was murdered 2 years ago because someone wanted to hurt me. I won't let that happen to you. I won't let it happen to our child. So you decided we'd be better off without you? Gabriella demanded. You made that choice for both of us without even asking what I wanted? What you wanted would have gotten you killed, Vincent shot back. This life, my life, it's death and blood and violence. Lorenzo can give you peace. He can give you safety. He can give you a normal life. I don't want normal, Gabriella cried. I want you. I've always wanted you. But you were too much of a coward to fight for us. The word hit Vincent like a physical blow. His face went white, then red. I'm not a coward. I'm trying to keep you alive. No, Gabriella said, moving closer until she was standing right in front of him. You're afraid. You're afraid to love someone because it might hurt. You're afraid to take a chance on happiness because you might lose it. So instead, you pushed me away and wrapped yourself in your pain like it's some kind of shield. Vincent's hands came up to grip her shoulders, not roughly but desperately. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Gabriella challenged, looking up into his tortured face. Then tell me you don't love me, Vincent. Look me in the eye and tell me you feel nothing for me or our baby. Tell me you're happy that I'm married to Lorenzo. Tell me you don't think about me every night like I think about you. Vincent's control finally shattered. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her as if he'd never let her go. I can't, he whispered into her hair. God help me, I can't lie to you. I love you, Gabriella. I've loved you since the first day you walked into my house. And it's killing me that you belong to someone else now. Gabriella sobbed against his chest, her hands fisting in his shirt. Then why did you let me go? Because loving you terrifies me more than anything else in this world, Vincent admitted. Because the thought of losing you, of our child being hurt because of me, it's more than I can bear. The door opened, and Lorenzo stepped back into the room. Vincent and Gabriella broke apart, but not before Lorenzo saw them in each other's arms. I think, Lorenzo said calmly, that we all need to have an honest conversation. He moved to his desk and poured 3 glasses of wine, though he gave Gabriella water instead. Then he sat down and looked at both of them with surprising gentleness. I'm not a fool, Lorenzo began. I knew when I proposed this arrangement that Gabriella's heart belonged to you, Vincent. And I knew you were running from your feelings rather than toward wisdom. Vincent's expression hardened. Then why did you agree to marry her? Because I hoped that given time, she might come to care for me, Lorenzo admitted. And because I do want a family. But I never intended to keep a woman who loves another man trapped in a loveless marriage. Gabriella looked at Lorenzo with surprise and gratitude. You're saying you'll let me go? I'm saying that you deserve to make your own choice, Lorenzo replied. Without ultimatums or manipulation. Vincent, you need to decide if you're brave enough to fight for this woman and your child. And Gabriella, you need to decide if you're willing to accept the risks that come with loving a man like Vincent. He stood and walked to the door. I'll give you both tonight to talk. Tomorrow, Gabriella, you'll tell me what you've decided. If you choose to stay, I'll honor our marriage and raise your child as my own with all the love I have to give. If you choose Vincent, I'll arrange a quiet annulment and wish you both happiness. After Lorenzo left, Gabriella and Vincent stood facing each other once again. He's a better man than I deserve, Gabriella said softly. He's a better man than both of us deserve, Vincent agreed. But he's not the man you love. No, Gabriella said, moving back into Vincent's arms. You are. For better or worse, you're the one I love. Vincent held her close, his hand coming to rest on her belly where their child grew. I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you peace. All I can promise is that I'll spend every day of my life trying to protect you and our child. I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe. I don't need promises, Gabriella said, looking up at him. I just need you to stop running. Stop pushing me away when things get scary. Stop trying to protect me from life. Let me choose you, Vincent. Let me choose us. Vincent kissed her then, pouring all his love and fear and hope into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. I choose you too, Vincent whispered. I'll always choose you, even when I'm terrified. Even when every instinct tells me to run. I choose us. The next morning, Gabriella told Lorenzo her decision. He accepted it with grace, even hugging her goodbye and telling her she would always have a friend in him if she ever needed one. 6 months later, Gabriella gave birth to a healthy baby girl in Vincent's mansion. Vincent held his daughter in his arms and wept, overwhelmed by love and terror in equal measure. She's perfect, he whispered to Gabriella as she rested in bed. You're both perfect. We're yours, Gabriella said, reaching for his hand. And you're ours. That's all that matters. And for the first time in his life, Vincent Moretti believed that maybe, just maybe, love was worth the risk after all.